Today we're going to learn about the present perfect tense. This tense is very common in English, and we use it to talk about past actions that are connected to the present. Sometimes the action happened in the past, but the exact time is not important. Sometimes it describes life experience, and sometimes it talks about actions that started in the past and continue now. First, let's look at how we form the present perfect. The structure is have or has plus past participle. We use have with I, you, we, they, and has with he, she, it. For example, I have traveled to many countries. She has traveled to many countries. We have watched the news. He has written an article. They have published a blog. In spoken English we often use contractions, such as, I've traveled, you've watched the news, she's written a report, we've published a blog, they've read the article. These forms are very common in everyday conversation. Now let's look at negative sentences. To make the present perfect negative, we add not after have or has. The most common forms are haven't and hasn't. For example, I haven't finished the article, she hasn't published the blog yet, they haven't watched the documentary, he hasn't read the newspaper today, we haven't seen the weather forecast. The structure is subject plus have or has plus not plus past participle. Next, let's look at questions. To make a question in the present perfect, we invert the subject and have or has, so have or has comes before the subject. For example, have you read the newspaper today? Has she published the article? Have they watched the documentary? Has he reported the news? Short answers are simple, yes, I have, yes, she has, no, I haven't, no, he hasn't. Now we need to understand past participles, because they are essential in this tense. For regular verbs, the past participle usually ends in ed, for example, work worked, ask asked, talk talked, report reported. If the verb ends in e, we add d, such as, like liked, believe believed, notice noticed. If a verb ends in y, we change y to I and add ed, like, try tried, apply applied, carry carried. Sometimes we double the final consonant, for example, admit admitted, blog blogged, prefer preferred. However, many common verbs are irregular, which means their past participle does not follow a simple rule and must be memorized. For example, go went gone, see saw seen, write wrote written, take took taken, do did done, eat ate eaten, speak spoke spoken. For instance, I have seen that documentary, she has written a review, they have taken photos for the magazine, we have spoken to the journalist. Now let's talk about when we use the present perfect. One important use is for past actions where the exact time is not important, but the result is connected to the present. For example, I have finished my homework. I can't find my remote control because I've lost it. The time is not important, but the result affects the present situation. We often use the present perfect with words like just, already, yet, and still. The word just means a short time ago, and usually appears between have or has and the past participle. For example, I've just seen the breaking news, the journalist has just reported the story, we have just watched the weather forecast. The word already means something happened earlier than expected, for example, I've already read that article, she has already published the blog, the channel has already reported the news. The word yet is usually used in questions and negatives, and it normally comes at the end of the sentence. For example, have you watched the documentary yet? Have they published the review yet? I haven't read the article yet, she hasn't finished the report yet. Another useful word is still, which describes something that has not finished even though we expected it to finish earlier, for example, the reporter still hasn't arrived, the blogger still hasn't published the article. Another common use of the present perfect is to talk about life experience, often with ever and never. For example, have you ever read this magazine? Have you ever watched a live documentary? I've never met a famous journalist, she has never written a blog. Finally, we use the present perfect for unfinished actions that started in the past and continue now, often with for and since. For example, she has worked as a reporter for 10 years. They have lived in London since 2015. I have followed this news channel for a long time. To summarize, the present perfect is formed with have or has plus past participle, and is used to talk about past actions connected to the present, including experiences, recent actions, and situations that continue today. Learning this tense will help you talk about news, experiences, and events that are important now.